This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. Kevin Stefanski announces that the Browns will play all of their starters. There is multiple teams interested in a trade for DTR. A couple bits of news have broken since this morning at the beginning of Browns practice. Let's talk about it. First thing we're going to do is talk about Kevin Stefanski playing the starters and what Deshaun Watson's status is for the game. Now, we know Deshaun Watson is fully cleared for football activities. We know that Deshaun Watson was scheduled to play. Uncertainty at the left tackle position has thrown that into question. You know, people are wondering if the Browns are willing to put Deshaun Watson behind an offensive line that is playing guys who would usually be third or fourth down the depth chart. Now, I don't think that characterization of it is true. I think Germain Ifedi is just as good, if not better, than James Hudson. So James Hudson not playing really doesn't change things to me. Like, if the plan was to put Deshaun Watson there behind James Hudson, the plan's going to be to put Deshaun Watson there behind Germain Ifedi. So I don't think anything changes there. They did say they're going to monitor the situation. So, like, if Ifedi gets hurt and they have no other solution, then I think they reconsider. But outside of that, I think they're going to stick with it. Another interesting note from that is that he said all the starters. So we're going to see a full preview of this team. Who knows for how long, but more reason to watch the Browns preseason game at 10 p.m. Eastern against the Seattle Seahawks, and make sure that you're locked in here, subscribed and notified so you can be here with me when I watch the game live on YouTube. Now, let's talk about this DTR trade rumor stuff, right? Multiple teams interested in a DTR trade. So in order to talk about a DTR trade, we need to have multiple conversations first, right? Because DTR is one of them players that some people feel super high on, and that really affects what the value or perceived value is of that player. So first things first, a quick evaluation of where I think DTR is. I don't see DTR becoming more than a backup to a fringe starter. Like, I think his absolute ceiling, if he gets the best stuff and he gets the best treatment possible, to me, his absolute ceiling is like somewhere near Tyrod Taylor. I think he could put together a couple good seasons as a starter, but at best, he's a transitional starter in my eyes, more likely to become a long-term backup. The reason I have to have this conversation before we talk about trade value is you got to be honest. You got to be really honest about a player if you're talking about trading him and wanting to get fair value back. The price can't be what you hope DTR becomes, right? A lot of people have the tendency to do that. They hope that DTR is going to become heir apparent to Deshaun Watson or something wild like that. So they put the price at that, or they say that's the price is too low on DTR, whatever it is. The truth is, this is what DTR is. And now knowing that, you can begin to set the price. Another question you might have is, why do teams want to trade for DTR? Right? If he's everything I just said he is, at best a transitional starter, why would teams want that? One, because that kind of player does have value to a lot of different teams in a lot of different situations, especially considering the age and the control that you have on DTR's contract. He's also a great athlete who can add a dimension to your team, but in order for that to happen, he does need to be active on your roster. And that leads me to the question of why the Browns would be willing to move off of DTR. I don't think the Cleveland Browns love the fit for DTR in this new offense, right? We're talking about this being an offense that pushes the ball down the field more often. We know that DTR has never been great at pushing the ball down the field. He could throw the football 1,000,000 miles per hour. He could put some zip on it. But as far as accuracy downfield it's been a problem for him. He's shown some improvement during the preseason, but not enough to where you feel comfortable with him in a game doing this consistently like the Browns would ask him to do it. So that makes him a difficult player to place, because if you're the Browns, what you don't want to do if you end up going to your backup or your third string quarterback and Deshaun Watson is set to return, what you don't want to do or have to do is change up the whole offense for 2 weeks just so you can get DTR at a passable state. It just doesn't really make sense to me that DTR would see any playing time. The only reason to have DTR on the roster, if you're the Cleveland Browns, is to develop him. But even then, he's not going to fit what you're moving towards. It just makes sense for the Browns to keep their ears open on trade offers for DTR while he's still young enough and has enough control on his contract to get trade offers. So I think that's really important. The timeline for DTR doesn't fit as well, right? DTR is not somebody I would feel comfortable playing or starting in a game right now for a team that needs to win now. I don't think he's good for that. I would rather trust Tyler Huntley, and I know Tyler Huntley hasn't looked great in the preseason, but Tyler Huntley has a track record that's stronger than the preseason. He's won regular season games before for the Baltimore Ravens in similar situations. You would feel much better about Tyler Huntley in that kind of a situation than you would about DTR. I could see DTR being a lot more useful for a team that's not contending or a team that has different needs on offense. For the Browns, the timeline I don't think matches up, and the skill set I don't think matches up anymore with DTR. And even like the great athlete stuff where you can bring him in for a package, it's not going to happen here in Cleveland because the active two quarterbacks are going to be Jameis Winston and Deshaun Watson. So there's really no need to have a package for DTR and put him in here. There's not even a need. There's no real way you can use DTR in that way unless you keep him on the game day 48, which you wouldn't keep DTR on the game day 48. You wouldn't go 3 quarterbacks deep on the game day 48. So he's not going to be active on game days, which means his athletic ability is not useful to you. He would be more useful to a team that runs a offense that's more strict on West Coast principles. He would be more useful on a team that's going to use his athletic ability. He would be more useful on a team that can put him as the backup quarterback. The Browns don't really fit the criteria for any of those, so it makes sense that they'd be willing to move off of DTR for the right price. Now, who's interested in DTR? I have 5 teams in mind that might be interested. The Minnesota Vikings, their backup situation behind Sam Darnold isn't great. They have Nick Mullins. I'm sure that they would like to have a young player with a little bit more upside than Nick Mullins back up Sam Darnold in that situation. And I think they would feel that the arm strength concerns of DTR could be mitigated by their play style and Justin Jefferson. The Ravens are an interesting team that I do think would be interested in trading for DTR. The price and figuring out the compensation, especially within division, is going to be difficult, but we're not talking about a starter here. We're talking about a backup, and that might be more doable to do a trade in division. If they were talking about trading like Mark Andrews to the Browns, that price would be ridiculous for Cleveland because he's going to play right away. DTR would more than likely not play. And then if you're the Ravens, Josh Johnson right now is your backup. Your other quarterbacks on the roster haven't shown that much promise. I would be interested in getting a better backup, especially one that you can have under control. Now that you've paid Lamar Jackson, it would make a ton of sense to me. So I think Baltimore would be somebody you would consider moving him to. Buffalo to me would make some sense. But the concern about the fit in the offense would be similar to me. Who knows? Maybe this is a situation where like the player evaluation is just different for both teams, and one team thinks he's a fit and the other team doesn't. But I don't think Buffalo is going to be that hotly involved, but they could be interested. A team that I've seen thrown out there a lot that I don't think is going to be interested is the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, on some level, it would make sense. DTR is from Las Vegas. The Vegas Raiders are in Las Vegas. They don't have a quarterback right now. They're They had just got a competition between Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew, so you would think that DTR could throw his name in there. But if you already have Aiden O'Connell as a backup and a guy that you consider starting, it doesn't make sense for me to trade for DTR. So I don't think the Raiders would be interested at all. A team that I do think would be interested and would make sense is the Detroit Lions. Hendon Hooker still hasn't shown that much promise that he could be the backup quarterback. And if you look at that quarterback roster outside of Hendon Hooker, it's not great. I could see them thinking, hey, we should move for DTR, get him as a backup. We can add in some explosive plays with him as an athlete, and really use him that way. And the Chargers would make sense to me because, one, they need a backup quarterback, and two, I think using him in a Greg Roman offense would be very interesting because I do think DTR is better when things are simplified and he's able to run a little bit more frequently than he usually does. So you're asking me what his value in a trade is with all of those teams. I'll tell you. Minnesota, I think you would want to get somebody like a Walter Rouse, so a young tackle, and then a conditional fifth, and I would do that deal. Maybe you can get like a conditional fourth and Dan Quessenberry. I think the price would be higher to take Quessenberry than Walter Rouse. I think if you're the Browns, you might even consider adding a 7th round pick to that to sweeten the pot to get a young tackle who looks pretty good so far in the preseason. For Baltimore, I think it'll be a conditional 5th and maybe like Quader Ishmael, like a blocking tight end, or a conditional 6 and like a Josh Jones, or a conditional 5th and a Josh Jones. So that's where I would be at. The price I think would be for Baltimore. Again, get a backup tackle or a blocking tight end. You'd be fine there. Buffalo, same thing. Ryan Van DeMark in a conditional 5th, or Gunnar Brenton. Gunnar Brenton would be interesting because he can play guard and both tackle spots. Ryan Van Denmark is probably the better tackle of the two. If you were moving him to Detroit, again, conditional 5th, Jamarco Jones or Connor McGalvin. Connor McGalvin is another guy who could play guard and tackle. Jamarco Jones is somebody I would just kind of play at tackle. He has played guard before, I believe, but he would be more primarily looked at as a tackle. The Chargers, though, don't have anybody that I would be interested in their tackle situation. So if you traded him to the Chargers, I would just exclusively want draft compensation back. So we're talking about maybe a conditional 4th, a conditional 5th, and maybe a 7th, right? Like, you would ask for a little bit more compensation since you're not getting a player back, but you would only really take compensation. So that's my view on the DTR trade and everything that came out today. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.